Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back even though I never left for another 50 years in polygamy review. This is going to be the beginning of chapter 31. Go ahead and do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps the channel. This is Forbidden Friendship, years 1985 to 1987. As usual, the lack of money plagued our large family and most others in the group. I was about to say poverty, and it's a P. Poverty lurked in every corner and contributed to nearly every disagreement, even behind closed doors. Now it was about my 6 children, Diane's 4, and other various needs. My little Opal was always breaking down, just like every old car we had owned. On lucky days, I could find a hill and park on top of it with the front of the vehicle pointed towards the decline. I would load my kids into the car and stand next to the open front door with one hand on the door frame and the other on the steering wheel to guide the car. I'd push with all my might. Once my car got rolling fast enough, I'd jump in, turned over the engine, and popped the clutch out really fast. If the car started and kept running, we'd smile and sometimes laugh in relief. If not, we were in deep doo-doo again. If there wasn't enough room at the bottom of the hill to push any further, I'd hide my pride and embarrassment and ask a passerby for help. My jumper cables were the saving member between my car battery and someone else. While I raised my children, there were only a few years during which I had a dependable car. The vehicles I drove were seldom compassionate. They would die in the scorching heat of the summer, the blizzards of winter, and any time in between. Y'all, while she's talking about cars, guess what I found out about my car recently? My AC isn't working. Guess what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to fix it. I'm not, because I've already fixed it before. So I'm not going to fix it. So I'm listening to her, and I kind of can, not as much as pushing the car down the hill. I'm not doing all that. But I can kind of relate. A couple of times when I found a payphone, oh, those aren't even around anymore, to call for help, I realized I didn't even have a quarter to my name. On those teary days, I'd pack the youngest of my kids in one arm, hold the hand of a toddler, and have the others follow close by me as we walked home. To add to my frustration, our telephone service, heat, or power would often be turned off for non-payment. Michelle would notice and find the money from some undisclosed resource to have the service restored. Michelle is the lady that her husband has a problem with, and yet here she is, and she's helping her. This was only one of the many things she had done for the kids and me, so I felt indebted to her for her ongoing kindness. Throughout the spring and summer of 1985, Michelle and I, as the primary presidency, created new primary manuals that would teach basic values such as honesty, cleanliness, and work ethics. Not that the children weren't being taught some of those ideals in our families, we just felt the focus shouldn't start with the higher laws of the gospel. We believed it was important for children to live the lesser laws before they even thought of abiding by the tough, crazy-making law of polygamy, which would soon inundate every aspect of their lives because they're taught from an early age that that's what they're supposed to do. Which is why a lot of them, even though they're treated so poorly, tend to stay in the situation. I was still very entrenched in serving the Lord by helping mankind. When I continued to write lesson plans, I also led the primary teachers meetings, taught a primary class, and taught a 4th grade class at our private school. I attended Relief Society area meetings to help quilt and prepare various items for the needy. I made 16 loaves of bread to sell at our regular Wednesday night Relief Society meetings, cleaned houses 3 days a week, and attended Sunday school and sacrament meetings. Through all those good deeds, I felt for sure I should attain a glorious entrance into the kingdom of God. However, even with all of those renewed convictions, single parenting was getting more difficult by the day. As the boys approached adolescence, it seemed one or the other of them had to be picked up from the police station every 4 or 5 months. Mark was never with me in those ordeals. Being an insecure polygamous woman, I was still afraid of everything and nearly everyone. My awkwardness and humiliation, as I assumed, were obvious to the authorities. The police always asked me where my son's dad was after they had already asked my son. Since the diamond had fallen out a few years earlier, I wasn't wearing my ring. During the times when I was obviously pregnant and had to retrieve one or both of my sons from the police station, I was sure that they would presume I was an unmarried Walton slut. Wow. Even when the police would ask, "Do you want us to call his dad?" I felt like it was a derogatory question, and they were really thinking, no wonder this poor kid is a juvenile delinquent. He has a hussy for a mother. He needs a dad around to teach him how to be responsible for a young man. Okay, if she told you that the father wasn't there, and the son told you that he was out of town, why you keep asking her about that? Or they could have been thinking, oh, this poor pregnant polygamous woman, here she is again while her husband is off screwing one of his younger, more attractive wives. I wanted to scream at them, yes, please call him now. I wanted to flip out and madly tell them everything that crossed my mind during those incidents. You're right. I wish he could be here, but he's not. He's either in California working to provide for his large polygamous family, or he's sleeping with his other wife when I have to pick up my sons. And I'm sick to death of having to live like this. I didn't, of course. Even though in all those situations I felt angry and ashamed, I forced myself to hide my tears until we were in the car, and then I let the floodgates open wide. I hate the fact that her kids are acting out the way that they're acting out. I wish that they weren't. Seems like y'all have been through enough. Why add on to your mother's stress? But I also understand they probably don't know how to deal with their feelings. I stood under the street lamps around the corner from our home. It was 2:15 in the morning. I was sure it was already way too late to save my son, Alan, from the evil clutches of teenage Barbara. It was said her goal was to deflower every young male in our neighborhood. Barbara's two dogs would bark, growl, and bare their fangs every time I approached the locked gate on their driveway. A light flickered high and then dimmed in the huge red barn where my son Jake told me Alan was getting educated. I've been taught a mother should be willing to sacrifice her life to save her children's virtue. Here was one of the greatest tests on earth. I should risk my own death to save my son from fornication, or I'd be held accountable to God for his sins. I would have to climb over the gate, run for my life, and hope the dogs didn't tear me to shreds. If I made it to the door, it would surely be locked. If not, I might be able to barge in and try to stop the evil deed that most likely had already happened. For the millionth time in my life, I daydreamed someone would hurry up and invent a cordless phone I could carry everywhere I went. How stupid, as if I had anyone to call at that hour of the morning anyway. I paced, cried, walked back and forth, and stared at the barn, just like the chicken, a mama, sobbing like a baby. I didn't have enough nerve, courage, or integrity to save my own son from a sin as evil as murder. We were taught we'd be accountable for our children's every action, good or bad. We paid the price if we lost them to the world. My mothers and those around us would often say, I'd rather lose a child in death than to the world. Wow. I pictured myself standing before God. If I ever made it, even near him, where's your son Alan? God would ask in his deep, accusing voice. I lost him, God. I would cry in anguish and his disgust at myself. Yes, Lord, I lost him to one of the most grievous sins in the world. That you did, Sophia, and all because you didn't have faith. You were not willing to sacrifice yourself to those dogs to save your son's soul. You failed him too. What kind of mother would do that, Sophia? How pathetically selfish of you. God would thunder. You are right, God, but you already knew that when you gave him to me. I had to reply before he condemned and sentenced me to eternal damnation, where I would live for eternity without my children, without a husband, or without my family. It's crazy. These are the thoughts that goes through her head, but she's taught a lot of things that to me are self-loathing. For nearly an hour, I was in my self-inflicted hell. As I paced back up the street toward home, my soul spoke to me again. None of it is true, Sophia. Not one single bit of it. Really? I asked out loud. My soul told me she was speaking the truth. I knew it from the top of my head to the soles of my feet. I started laughing. Soon I was dizzy and lightheaded from the oxygen surging rapidly in and out of my lungs. I probably sounded like a laughing hyena. Excuse me. And for a moment, I wondered if the neighbors might think I was drunk and call the police, but I didn't care. The God of love let my soul share a key of hope. In my joy, I contemplated, why do I keep hanging on so tightly to all those lies? Why do I keep trusting the horrible God I was raised to believe in? A loving God would not destroy even one of his children over another soul's free agency, especially over situations we have no control over. When I returned home, I climbed into my nice, warm bed and turned my son over to another deity of love and slept like a baby. For a long time, Diane had wanted and needed her own place. She checked out a few possibilities she heard about and got help from a government agency to pay a good portion of her house payment. So she went house shopping. So y'all keep producing all these kids and taking advantage of certain things that are offered to people who have a significant amount of children, I guess. When she took me to see the one she wanted to buy, we jumped up and down in excitement. We would both have our own homes and more space. Other than the distance between our children and us, we loved the idea. In June 1986, Diane signed a home loan. After 8 long years of miserable basement living, she happily moved into a split-level home in West Valley. Mark was happy for us, but not at all happy about his travel time or the extra cost for gasoline. He couldn't keep up with all the bills for one home, let alone another, he told me. If Diane gets the house, she'll have to pay for her own expenses. I was happy for each of us to be enjoying more space in our own homes, but I also envied Diane's ability to be independent and financially secure. With an extremely low house payment, her secretarial skills, a stable job with a good income, she was able to be her own family's breadwinner. At my house, we were barely getting some of our bills paid with the money Mark was sending me. In my new gratitude for life and changes, I counted on things looking up. It was beautiful, sunny day in August. My homemade flower curtains swayed in the breeze coming through the open windows. I changed the sheets on my bed and listened to Michelle's younger children, whom I was tending, and my 3 youngest laugh and play in the backyard. Suddenly, my soul directed me to check the kids. Since I was so disgustingly tenacious about finishing anything I'd begun, I decided it would suffice if I peeked out at them through my upstairs window. The yard was fenced in. I counted all 6 little children happy running around the back lawn, so I carried on. In less than a minute, I heard the voice again, this time shouting at me, "Go now, Sophia. Go outside and check on the children now." By the time I flew downstairs and out the back door, the kids were all standing around a hole in the ground screaming at me. "Anne fell in. She's in the hole." Someone had removed the concrete cover from the septic tank clean out, and all I can see was the top of 2.5-year-old Anne's head. Needless to say, while rescuing and cleaning her up, I beat myself up until I had enough agony to last a lifetime. She, I'm sure, was about to walk toward the hole when I first peeked out the window. Girl, you're not the only person who's done this sometimes. I think we've all heard that inner voice sometimes, or some would say the Holy Spirit. And we've listened and been happy sometimes that we listened, or we brushed it off and been upset that we didn't. If only I had gone out the first time, she wouldn't have fallen in. 4 months, our family and friends made jokes to lighten our hearts. Let's hope that the deepest ish Anne ever gets herself into is that. Everyone laughed but me. I tried to, but the guilt was still tormenting me. How could I ever live with myself after hearing my soul's voice if I hadn't acted quickly enough? The thought of falling in that crap and then to know it's a mixture of... Okay, I'll stop. By November, Mark's tolerance had maxed out. He had enough of my rebellion where Michelle was concerned. He was sure she was the cause of all our problems. With her out of the picture, he believed things would work between us, so he decided to recruit my father for assistance. Because she's a good friend. Insecure little man. Dad tried to take the middle ground, but leaned more in Mark's favor. He said he wanted me to limit my friendship with Michelle. Mark is right, Dad said. You're his wife, and your responsibilities to him and your children first. The man's not even home. But I started to question. No but, Sophia. She'll be taken care of. I'll talk to her and her mom. We'll get her the help she needs so your friendship can wind down. At first, I was really angry with Mark for forcing me into compliance. My don't tell me what to do mind wanted to rebel. I was also livid my husband had told my parents Michelle was a lesbian. After all, I was working so hard to stay in denial. If she was, who cares? If I keep refusing to believe it, it won't be true, and the problem will just go away, I must have told myself. I tried many times to change Mark's mind. She might feel attracted to me in that way, but as long as she doesn't act on her desires, she isn't a lesbian. She is and has been acting on her gay tendencies for a long time now, Sophia. Are you blind? For a while, my pride held back my gratitude. But as several months went by, I recognized the value in Dad and Mark's decision. In Michelle's absence, I experienced a grief beyond measure. The pressure I felt to always be available for her happiness and to go along with her powerful, know-it-all intellect finally alleviated. Okay, well then I gotta take back my words. If she was really causing her to be stressed out in other ways, then okay, I'll take it back. My life began to feel so much like my own. I lost nearly 20 pounds without even trying. Phone conversations and correspondence between Mark and me also improved. In April 1987, when Mark was in California, 3 years and 2 months after Anne's birth, our precious Keith came into the world, just as he had promised his sister right after she was born. In the middle of his fairly normal delivery, other than the debilitating pains that seemed to be worse than ever before, the contractions completely stopped. By then, Keith was in the birth canal. There was a grave possibility that he could have severe birth defects if he wasn't born quickly. Are you going to have more kids, Sophia? Aunt Amelia asked in aggravation while my young midwife gave me a shot of Pitocin in my thigh. I told her no. I was positive this was my last baby I'd ever have. My body's pain tolerance had gone far beyond the call of duty. In an instant, I was in labor again, one contraction after another, faster, heavier, harder. My back hurt so much I thought I'd scream. Those back pain, those back contractions, oh my goodness. Back labor, I had back and stomach, the worst. The worst. It was to the point where I just wanted it to be in one area, but what can you do? There are no words on this earth to tell the relief my body felt and my heart felt when my handsome Keith was at last born with no injuries or birth defects. When I held my amazing son in my arms, I cried tears of gratitude. My childbearing years were finally over. Mark and I had the 7 children we always knew we would have. The basketball team I talk so often about was now complete. We had our 5 handsome sons and 2 beautiful daughters. Everything about Keith's infancy was perfect. He had a knack for nursing, and unlike the rest of the kids, Keith weaned himself from nursing right into drinking a cup. I reveled in each stage of his development and celebrated when there were no more stinky diapers to change, at least until I became a grandmother, which I look forward to a long time in my future. Diane wanted to have Mark's first girl. I felt sad for her sake. I had the privilege. As per our religion, a woman's value is too often placed on how many children she gives her husband, especially sons. So I was full of gratitude to have given Mark his first and last son, his first and last daughter, as well as 4 more incredible children in between. Looking back, then Diane and I produced 10 children with Mark. One of us had a child every year for 6 years in a row. In all those births, neither of us chose to invite the other to be a part of our baby's deliveries, as some sister wives do. Some of the things I felt was supposed to do to be altruistic sister wife felt too intrusive. To hold on to my autonomy meant privacy in any way possible. I especially felt that way with childbirth, which is such a vulnerable and intimate time. From my early childhood, I wanted my own personal space away from everyone else. One way to keep my autonomy, and perhaps for Diane too, was to remain at those times. Underlying the respect and the love Diane and I felt for each other after living plural marriage together for nearly 10 years was our unspoken resentment frustrations, and jealousy. Always there, flanked by our good and happy times, was our acute awareness of each other, the other love in Mark's life. Each of us was the other woman who wanted and needed his love, the one who would take his devotion, love, and affection and offer it back threefold. With all of the rubbish in the forefront of our minds, when we dared let our thoughts venture, there were still the lingering, tormenting questions. Does he love her more? Does he enjoy sex with her more than with me? Does he wish he was with her, or is he thinking of her when he is with me? These are all questions that, I'm going to be honest, I wondered. I wondered that when I was cheated on. That's something to say, but if I'm being honest, it is. So can you imagine being in a situation where you're in, constant awareness of this fact and knowing that your husband is with another? And I feel like it's only natural to wonder those things. Therefore, communication was seldom sincere and maybe not talked about at all, especially after Mark felt exiled to California. If either of us dared to try to communicate with him about our personal hurts and feelings, we was creating a troublesome gap between him and ourselves. It was the best for Diane and me to be as passive, agreeable, and as kind as we could to make ourselves be. For weeks and months, we've held on to our miseries so they couldn't turn into hostilities. We may have wanted to punch or scream at Mark for things he did or didn't say. It could be something he'd done or had not done, or possibly something created by our own imaginations. But if we dare bring up any hurtful issues, we risk our good standing with him. See, they really treat these men like you gotta walk on eggshells with them. And I can't be with somebody that I gotta walk on eggshells with. He signed up for this. He should be willing to understand that sometimes his wives are gonna feel this way. And that keep sweet mentality to me is just requesting too much of the woman, because the man doesn't have to keep sweet. We might as well have voluntarily sent Mark off to his sweet, cheerful wife, who was grateful to love and placate him even if she knew better. Y'all, I can't remember who said it. I saw a few people say it in the comments. Someone said that they wonder if he had somebody else in California. And I kind of wonder it too. Guess we'll see. But after doing that for way too long, I couldn't deny and hold on to my grievances any longer. No matter the consequences, things got so tough between Mark and me, I felt like I would suffocate if I didn't do something different. Even without Michelle in our lives, all we did was fight, whether he was home for a weekend or for several weeks. The issues were the same: money, plural marriage, religion, lack of religion, time, needs, his absence, his anger at me, verbal abuse to our kids, and my inconsistency when it came to disciplining them. When I was a child and teen, I swore my children would never have to go through the distress of hearing or watching their parents fight. Yet our discord became so thunderous and unresolved, one of us would finally storm away, and I would cry until my eyes swelled nearly shut. Chapter 32, Demoted to Nothingness, 1988. Oh, wow. Through my many years of service in the group, I heard Mary, our Relief Society president, and those women who served with her brag about my abilities to quickly and effectively accomplish anything that needed to be done. The problem was my identity and value were based on my service and the recognition I received because of it. I was 37 years old with an identity crisis wedged between my ego and my soul, neither of which were fully alive or real. A few weeks before Thanksgiving, Mary asked me to prepare a meal for a needy family the next Friday. Of course, I told her. After our phone conversation, I tried to figure out how I would get the food for this offering. Exactly. How you gonna tell me to prepare a meal and not provide me with the things that I need to prepare that meal? You want me to prepare that meal? Help me out there, Mary. It would have been a miracle if Mark could have sent enough money to pay all of our bills, let alone for us to be able to buy food for our Thanksgiving dinner. Soon it would be Christmas, and once again, I'd have to swallow my pride and sign up for Toys for Tots or accept some other kind of charity. But I was too proud to shirk my responsibilities by letting Mary know how destitute we were. Oh, so you were part of the problem too because you didn't tell her you didn't have it. Around 6:30 the next Friday evening, Mary's call woke me up. She wanted to know why the meal I was to take to the needy family wasn't there yet. My horrible depression had gotten the best of me. I had forgotten about the meal. I gave Mary an excuse. In my temporary insanity, I believe I was still a semi-capable person, and told her I'd get some food to the family right away. Dressed in the slippers and pajamas I'd worn all day, I wandered into the kitchen, opened our refrigerator and cupboards. I saw a few pieces of bread left in a bag, a quarter of gallon milk, and some leftover macaroni. I knew there was no money in my wallet or in the bank. There wasn't enough food for my own kids. I started to sob until I was wailing uncontrollably. Feeling only half conscious, I wandered back down the hall, climbed into my bed, and covered my head with the blankets. Mary called again around 8:30 or 9. When she heard my drowsy, melancholy voice, she said angrily, "Sophia, you sound like you don't care one bit about this. What about those hungry kids?" When I couldn't say one word, she continued her rant. "How could you be so selfish and irresponsible? If you weren't going to make sure that they got their meal, you should have called me or asked someone else to take care of them. I really can't believe you did this, Sophia. What on earth has gotten into you to be so undependable, so callous? How will we be able to trust or count on you ever again?" Tears leaked from my already red eyes. I didn't even try to defend myself. Mary's words plagued me over and over. It was exactly as I thought. If they'd known I had no value and no worth, they wouldn't have trusted me in the first place. The tiny sacrifice I dared think or hope I possessed, Mary had just assured me was a lie. In one day, I was demoted to nothingness. I changed 18-month-old Keith, brought him to bed with me, and fell asleep. Other than for my children's sake, I never wanted to wake up again. I'm just happy I'm not this type of person. If I don't have it, I'm gonna tell you I don't have it. I'm just not. Pride, y'all. We got to do better about these things. If we can't do something, let's just say that we can't do it. But once again, she's in a religion that makes her feel guilty about these things. On one of those dismal and lonely evenings near the end of November 1988, everything in my life felt completely hopeless. All the kids were staying with friends or asleep. I crashed downstairs on the couch in front of the television with a huge bag of peanut M&Ms to sedate my body and mind into oblivion. I popped one after another of those addictive morsels into my mouth, devouring them as if I'd never get another bite to eat. Irritating voices blasted across the television, but I didn't want to get up to change the channel or adjust the sound. I studied the unpainted, filthy, dented drywall that had suffered 9 years of wild living conditions with Francine, Diane's, and now my kids. I gaped at the matted carpet square that barely covered the concrete floor as I cried and kept eating the chocolate. Soon the bag was nearly empty. I had a terrible stomach ache and more tears rolled down my fat cheeks, drenched from my size 22 blouse. Okay, so at this point, she did put on some weight. I hadn't left my house for nearly 2 months. I was afraid of what might have happened if I left, and yet I honestly had no idea why leaving scared me so much. I hated my rundown house. I despised my huge body and myself, but I couldn't make myself stop eating. I was surely a failure as a mother, wife, sister, wife, and servant. I believed I was a piece of rubbish in every single way. I was going to puke, and yet I watched my hand reach into the bag of M&Ms and pump them into my mouth. 1, 2, 3, as if they were drugs and I was an addict. God, I screamed, look at me. Look what a horrible, revolting person I am. I'm out of control in every way. I've begged you a million times to make me stop overeating. I've begged you to help ease my grief, my loneliness, depression, flaws, and unholy feelings. Even while praying, I grazed on a few more chunks of chocolate. You've got to do something, God, before I kill myself, with food or without it. Finally, I lugged my pathetic body off the couch, turned off the irritating television, and slowly climbed up along the long flight of stairs. completely out of breath at the top. I cursed at my physical, mental, and spiritual nauseous self. I got in bed, and as I laid there, my heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my tears. My bloated stomach, oh goodness. This girl, I knew I wanted out of the misery. Slowly but surely, I was going to die. 3 or 4 weeks passed. I rejected phone calls from Mark, friends, and family. My older kids took care of my younger ones. Alan or Jake somehow found food or money to buy it. They fed and dressed the little ones and played and fought with them. You're really depressed. The only time nearly 2-year-old Keith or any of the kids got hugs or kisses from me was when they climbed on my bed where I'd stayed day and night. I believe my kids and others would be better off without such a depraved, worthless drudge holding them back. If I stayed in bed long enough without eating, I could die without the shame of actually putting a gun to my head or taking an overdose of sleeping pills. In between tears, sorrow, and pain, I slept all day and all night, and then I slept some more. Then Michelle called. The kids told her I was sleeping again and still wasn't taking calls. She called again and again. When she told them to get me to the phone, they repeated to her exactly what I told them to say. Mom can't come to the phone. She's resting and doesn't want to be bothered right now. They knew the routine. I'd gotten after them when they attempted to make me talk to anyone. Michelle's demands and persistence became so annoying, I told Sky to take the phone clear off the wall. Michelle showed up at the door and nudged her way past my children, whom I had ordered not to open the door for anyone. Sophia, wake up. I heard her deep voice say. I hoped the voice I heard was an angel who was finally going to walk with me to hell and drop me off there. Sophia, come on, wake up. When she saw my eyes, she asked, what is going on, my precious friend? I've been calling you for a week. Every time I call, no one answers, or your kids tell me you're sleeping and they're not supposed to wake you up. I was pretty foggy and didn't want to talk. Michelle refused to leave until I would tell her what was going on. After some coaxing, I felt obligated to give in. There wasn't anything she hadn't already heard before. The only difference was this time was I had no more hope left that I could change anything. Every physical, personal, private, spiritual, religious, or emotional problem felt insurmountable. So why haven't you killed yourself by now, Sophia? You know how to do it. There are millions of ways to take yourself off this planet, you know, Michelle charged. Because it's against God's laws, I snapped at her. She laughed. So you think starving and sleeping yourself to death isn't any different? Before long, the buckets of tears I still haven't spilled felt like a downpour of rain. Between my heartache from crying and deep breaths of air, I told Michelle I'm even a failure at this. I can't even die. I may be the shittiest mother on earth, but I do know that no one on this earth will ever love my kids as much as I do. I'm sure that's why I couldn't will myself to die. I held on for them. Michelle laid down next to me. She held me tight until I quit weeping and dozed off again. When I woke up hours later, there was a note on my nightstand. Dear Sophia, I've taken your kids to my house to bathe and feed them. We'll all be back in the morning, so be ready to go with me to breakfast. I love you, my sweetest, dearest, most precious friend. Hugs and kisses, Michelle. If those are the type of letters that he saw before as her hitting on, Sophia, then I guess my best friend has hit on me before too, because my best friend out of nowhere will tell me how appreciative of me and how great I am and this and this and this. And I feel like sometimes those words are said because it may just be something that they feel or that they know you need to hear. When Michelle got to my house in the morning, I told her I'd get up, but I wouldn't go with her anywhere. You've got to get out of your dark, gloomy house and get some sunshine, Sophia. If you won't go with me, I'll get Jake and Alan to help me haul you out of here. You can get dressed and walk out of here on your own, or we'll carry you out in your pajamas. I knew Michelle well enough to believe that's exactly what she'd do, so I grudgingly complied. When I was dressed and we walked outside, she opened up her car door on the driver's side. I apprehensively squeezed my fat buddy under the steering wheel and slid next to the passenger door that had been smashed shut. The sun was going to instantly burn me up, or the sky would cave in on top of us, one or the other. Anything and everything around me felt so oppressive. While we drove up State Street, she said she was going to take her time so we could talk, and then she'd take me to lunch. No, Michelle, just take me home now. I want to go back now, I shouted at her. I didn't want to go anywhere in the first place. I wanted to escape and run back home, but she had me caged between her wrecked car door and her large, overweight body sitting behind the steering wheel. Just then, she pulled down the driveway next to a huge office building parked in the back. This doesn't look like a restaurant, I said. This is where Big Bear, my therapist's office, is. I've got to fill out some papers and ask him a few questions. If he's in another appointment, it might take me 20 minutes or so. Then we can go eat. Come in with me where you'll be warm. I think Michelle's being a good friend. Let's see. Knowing the depths of my anxiety, Michelle walked close to me all the way inside the building. In the foyer, I sat next to her and watched the people come and go. I stared at the walls while Michelle stood at the receptionist's desk filling out forms. As I waited and waited, I got more and more angry. The receptionist took the brown clipboard from Michelle and told her, "Thank you. It will only be a few minutes." "What's going on?" I asked. "What are we waiting for now? You said all you had to do was fill out some papers. Let's get out of here. I feel sick." Again, I was fighting tears and heart palpitations. "Give me your keys and I'll wait in the car. Just hang in here with me, Sophia. I need you to go in there with me. I'm sure it won't take very long. Breathe in some deep breaths, deep and slowly. It will help mellow you out a little." I was up and ready to leave when a large, dark-haired woman with deep brown eyes stepped into the waiting room. "Michelle, Big Bear is with another client. He asked me to help you with your questions." Turning toward the door, I told Michelle again I'd wait outside for her, but she grabbed my hand tightly. "Please come in with me, Sophia. I promise it won't be long." I followed. "Hello, Sophia. I'm Linda," the woman said as Michelle and I sat down in a small room that made me feel claustrophobic. Michelle slid closer to me and smiled. "So tell me what's going on, Sophia. Your dear friend here says you want to die and you've been feeling suicidal for a very long time." I didn't answer her. My whole body was on fire and I was ticked as hell at Michelle. I charged for the door, but Michelle jumped in front of me. "Please, Sophia, please talk to her. If you won't talk to Linda for you, then at least talk to her for your kids' sake. Just tell Linda how you're feeling and what you're thinking. That's all you have to say." Obviously, Michelle knew exactly how to make me comply. Linda asked me what was going on in my life. She had way too many snoopy questions, and they felt way too personal in my head. I knew this was not the place for me. Many people in the group thought psychologists or therapists were the epitome of evil influences, because God forbid you go to someone that actually helps you become a better person or allows you to see that you don't have to necessarily listen to what you've been brought up in. We were sure they would talk you into leaving your religion, your God, and your family. Therapists would purposely tell you 100 truths to get you to believe the one lie. That would ruin your life as well as others. Don't trust her. She'll talk you into leaving your husband and your family, I worried. But I couldn't help myself. Once I got started, I spilled my guts. I rambled on and on about how terribly unhappy I was and how I couldn't function any longer. "Tell me, Sophia, what will make you happy?" Linda questioned. "Well, that one is easy," I said. My heart had settled down. I was still nervous, but my soul felt surprisingly comfortable. "Go ahead, tell me." I told her of all the things I could think of that would make me happy. If Mark was home more and was nice when he was. If Diane and I stopped. I couldn't let her know we were polygamous. And if my kids would only, if we had money for, if they didn't, if only I were or wasn't such a, Linda interrupted. "Sophia, all of those things are about everyone else. What about you? What will make you happy, Sophia? What will make Sophia happy? What did I just tell her? Is she dumb or something? I wondered. I just blathered out a list a mile long. Doesn't she get it? I just told you, I said, trying to not sound as grouchy and frustrated as I felt. Listen, let's just start with you and stay with you, Linda said calmly. Speak about only you, not if he, she, or they wouldn't, but what is it that Sophia can or can't do to make Sophia happy? I couldn't think of one single thing to say. I had no idea what would make Sophia happy. That question was not religiously kosher. When we finally left, I was so frustrated and angry I wanted to scream at everyone and everything. I was also afraid. It sounded as if a witch had entered my body. I certainly hadn't behaved like the normal, civilized Sophia everyone thought they knew. And all my life, I couldn't ever recall feeling as angry or being as rude and mouthy to a friend as I had been to Michelle or Linda. Linda wrote my assignment on a piece of paper and asked me to bring it back to her in a few days. That is the end of that chapter. How long is chapter 33? Because I got to go do some stuff. Let me see if we have time. 33. Okay. Y'all, I'm pushing it. Courage to Heal or Die, 1989. I guess this is fair because you only get 2 of these this week. Since Michelle rescued me, I'd gone against Dad and Mark's counsel. She helped me catch up on months of cleaning that my children had tried to handle while I was depressed and at rock bottom. With her support and love, I started to feel alive and regain some sense of hope. Loving my children will keep me alive and going until I can learn to love myself, I told Michelle. She kissed my forehead. It's already working. Thank you, God, for your children. I sat at the kitchen table and glared at the blank lines on my yellow legal-sized piece of paper, the homework I hadn't been able to complete. My therapist had written in print across the top, 10 things I love about Sophia. She struggled to say 10 things that she loved about herself. Wow. I reread the directions Linda noted. You may not use the words he, she, they, them, or others. This is impossible. I fumed inside at the time and the energy I had already wasted, and I still hadn't written a single word on the paper. Anything good about me was because of him, her, they, them, or others. After 15 minutes, I finally came up with 3 things I loved about me that didn't use one of the non-allowed words. I love Sophia because she helps everyone. I love Sophia because she is kind to people. I love Sophia because she tries to please God. Interesting way, but it's still about others. When I finished, I crammed the folded paper into my purse and started washing the dishes. A few days later, Michelle picked me up to make sure I would keep the appointment. This is just the point I'm trying to make, Sophia, Linda said impatiently. You don't even know who Sophia is outside of everyone else, do you? If you were all alone in this world, what would you like and love about yourself? Try it again. You can come up with at least 5 things for me now before you leave. I already tried. This is just ridiculous, I said. Okay, we'll do it together. I'll coach you. Together we determined 2 solid outcomes that felt genuine to me. I love Sophia because she is talented. Linda made me write, and I love her because she is a good person. It was important, Linda told me, to repeat those 2 reasons out loud over and over again with a conscious effort to believe them. After several times, my eyes filled with tears of comfort and relief. For the rest of the day, I smiled. Not my previous public display, perpetual smiles exuding my righteous servitude and codependence, but smiles of true joy. There were at least 2 first-rate things about me I could at last believe in. For most people, I imagine, finding something to love about oneself would be effortless. Yeah, like I said earlier. For me, it had always been a forbidden assessment, which is true because she was even told that she wasn't even allowed to stare at herself too long in a mirror. My inauguration into a whole new life derived from those 2 simple statements. In January, Alan, with Jake's brotherly support, asked me how I feel about being a grandma. I figured differently. I wanted his question to just be curiosity, so I passed his implication off as a joke. I'd absolutely love to be a grandmother, Alan, when it is the right time. He laughed nervously. Well, it must be the right time. I was silent while I stared out the big kitchen window into our still unfinished backyard. Before I knew it, my emotions kicked in and tears streamed down my cheeks. Mom, Alan put his arm around me. Are you okay? I turned to him. I'm way too young to be a grandma. Your baby brother isn't quite 2, and I'm only 37. Good grief, Alan. You and Allie are only 16. Oh, goodness. You are way too young to be parents. Don't you know I already feel like a crazy woman? What if your baby turns out to be a lunatic like its grandmother? It's not funny, but gracious. Nervous, angry, and worried, I paced around the kitchen. I was barely holding myself together after all these years. How could these teens possibly stay sane and be responsible for a new baby? What in the world were you thinking, Alan? I finally yelled at him. I told you a million times to keep that thing in your pants. Yeah, I know you did, Mom. You taught me right from wrong. I promise it's not your fault. The reality was there was nothing I could do about it. I began to laugh. I jumped up and down and screamed, I'm gonna be a grandma. Me, wild, crazy me, a grandma. I gently backhanded Jake in the stomach. Can you believe it? I'm gonna be a grandma. Yeah, I can't believe it, Jake said snidely. Alan hasn't kept that thing in his pants ever since he discovered it. At the beginning of my 6-week crash recovery course, paid for by Medicaid, Linda and I set some goals to help me build a personal foundation. She promised me I would discover who Sophia was outside of the belief system I was in. Linda also suggested I start attending Overeaters Anonymous classes, OA, at least once a week. In a large room, 15 women and 1 man took turns speaking. They were forthright about their years and years of binging, stealing food, shame, self-loathing, hiding, purging, fad diets, starvation diets, bulimia, and anorexia. All of the participants spoke with a level of candor I'd never heard before. I'd always understood that kind of blatant, shocking truth would only be revealed if we were ever met the Lord. At the point we'd be asked to review our whole entire life with the utmost frankness. Only then would we dare divulge any deep, dark secrets and flaws. Then after God's judgment, we'd be guided to hell or to heaven. But here on this earth, in that OA meeting, I heard confessions about matters I thought were reserved for God and on that judgment day. Not only had members admitted to their mistakes in this life, but also to the foul treatment they had inflicted on their bodies. I learned about wooden spoon handles, how well they work to cause gagging, and how laxatives help to keep weight down. Well, that would obviously force you to stay near the throne and keep you from grocery shopping, I smiled. At my first OA meeting, I heard of more desperate things to do and to try than I ever imagined, and I thought I'd done it all. When it was my turn to speak, I was nervous and somewhat shy. The leader said I had to say something, even if it was I passed. To the end of deafening silence, someone prompted just a few honest words. I finally found the courage enough to say a couple sincere words. Hi, my name is Sophia. I am a compulsive overeater. Honest words. Well, frankly, all I can say is, even though you are strangers to me, I feel like you know me better than anyone else on this earth. It sounds to me like you understand my pain, my heartache, my plight, and my desires more than anyone in my family and in our religion, I was thinking. I believe all of you know me more than God does. Now let's get out of here so we can go home and eat. Everyone laughed while they clapped for another newcomer. Michelle and I decided to experience some marijuana she somehow obtained. Okay. I wasn't expecting that. We just wanted to see what it was like, and we needed to see why our kids enjoyed it so much. Then we'll know what we're up against, we justified. The springtime rapids swirled and pounded against the massive boulder the two of us sat on before the river split on either side and crashed down the mountain. The pot ignited several and every sensual aspect of our beings. We thought the poetry and the songs we created in our state of mind were amazing. Our laughter galloped in all directions before it bounced against the mountain sides and echoed back at us. On the drive down Little Cottonwood Canyon, Michelle abruptly pulled off to the side of the road. Sophia, she said slowly and seriously. Whenever she sounded it's like that. It scared me. You know already, Big Bear, my therapist, and I have been working together for months, right? He said, I can't hold back any information from you any longer. Oh, Lord. I'm going to come out of the closet. You know what I mean, don't you, Sophia? Oh, wow. So she is. Okay. You're the first person I'm telling this to, even before my husband. I've tried with every fire of my being to deny myself these feelings, but I've felt attracted to girls and women all my life for as long as I can remember. Of course, I understood what she's saying. Still, I was sick and disheartened. Why didn't you admit this to me a long time ago? I grumbled. I felt betrayed and embarrassed. For nearly 4 years, you and I told Mark you're not a lesbian. I told him you're not attracted to women of the same sex because you are married and have a good sex life with your husband. You have 5 kids together. Now what, Michelle? What about the kids? What about your religion and our friendship? She didn't say another word. Her silence always felt like punishment. After a long time, Michelle slid next to me and took my hand to hers. You know the worst part of it, Sophia? I am in love with you. Oh. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that, but it's just like, um, I've been in total denial about it all along. Then Michelle leaned in and kissed me on the lips. I wanted to tell her I didn't like it at all, that it made my skin crawl, but I didn't want to break her heart. I'll just keep my distance, I told myself, to make sure it doesn't happen again. Sophia, talk to me. You are really mad, aren't you? Michelle asked when I pulled away from her. I don't know what to say, Michelle. Guess I'm in shock and afraid. You know I don't feel the same way, and it's going to be a kick in the you know what having to tell Mark about this. For the next few months, therapy came in mega doses at my OA meetings, but without my therapist, Linda, I'd completely taken chocolate out of my diet as an alcoholic does with drinking. The 45 pounds of fat that was melting away was nothing in comparison to the emotional sludge being ripped from my guts and slowly but surely dissipating. On the outside, away from the oppressive be good or else community I'd grown up to live in, I felt more love and true friendship than I ever knew existed. Best of all, contrary to my mother's belief that it was not okay to love yourself, I was learning was absolutely mandatory for genuine happiness. However, the more I was learning and the better I felt about myself, the worse things got between Mark and me. He had never known a Sophia who stood up for herself as much, especially one who was learning to like the person she saw in the mirror. Even worse for Mark, Michelle and I were on the road of progress together. She helped save my life. She cared when no one else even noticed my years of decline into hellish darkness. While attending regular OA meetings, I also started going to Codependent Anonymous meetings and had an extremely intense course based on the book, The Courage to Heal. Our discussion group was for me and 4 other women who had been molested. When we were children. She needed this. But none of us knew the importance of having a professional facilitator to guide our progress. We wanted healing, and we felt we courageously walked through the traumas created by our perpetrators. All of us realized how much the abuse continued to adversely impact our lives and prevent us from reaching our potential. With other loving and understanding victims, we could purge. During the recall and re-experiencing the trauma, we wrapped our arms around each other, feeling each other's sorrows and remorse. We allowed ourselves to let go of the racking agony and shame we'd carried for too many years. Some women fell into fetal position, or convulsed or thrashed as they wept uncontrollably. Some of us screamed, rocked back and forth, and trembled. Some pounded on things with their fists while they sobbed and wailed. Some recollections played out in vivid, bloody detail, while some couldn't and never spoke out aloud. We wanted to recover from those abuses, no matter what it took. We wanted to become confident, emotionally secure women. And we knew until we got past the actions of our perpetrators, as well as any unwarranted feeling of responsibility we carry, our healing would be restricted. The class permitted me insight into my newly wed traumas. I began to understand all the negative feelings about body fluids, which was everything about sex. My subconscious anger of being exploited when I was a child, along with guilt from the belief sex was wicked unless used for procreation, often interfere with Mark's and I Mark's and my pleasures and new discoveries. I was sad about the fights that occurred because of our naivety and misunderstandings. Neither Mark nor I had any idea we were dealing with the repercussions of sexual trauma. My convictions that I was ignorant, stupid, and inferior were also exacerbated because of the many episodes of abuse in my life. Oh, okay, I thought I was going to cease. The fact that I wasn't mentally there to participate in the thousands of elementary school lessons was beginning to make sense as well. I remembered I could hear my teachers' voices, but couldn't understand what they were saying. My mind was outside of me, flying in the sky, running down the road, or hiding in cornfields so no one could find me. I was busy, just didn't look like that. I was actively preoccupied with survival. Yes, you were. To avoid my constant fears of the world coming to an end, our family being ripped apart, the devil coming to get me, of the emotional and physical cruelty from peers at school and in our neighborhood, and from the sexual abuse, I became skilled at disappearing while my body stayed to meet the blows of life. When I returned from those safety flights, I felt a loss of being, memory, and orientation. I also experienced time lapse. No wonder all of that intensified my feelings of stupidity, which my peers readily accused me of. No wonder I missed so much of everything going on around me. A simple natural teenage kiss or touch would be grotesque rather than pleasurable and would often cause me to rage inside. During my search for awareness, it hit me how risky such behaviors were. I had subconsciously tried to calm and to claim power and control over my situations. I'd been too small to deal with as a child. We had been warned by professionals not to attempt to evoke the pain and raw emotion without someone trained to walk us through it. That's so true. But we broke self-reliant troopers who felt we had all the love and support we would need from each other. Before I knew it, I was falling into deep depression again. There's a reason why some of these things require additional help. My sad realizations about my past sucked me backwards at an alarming rate. Abandoned, unkempt, Chucky, snot-nosed little Sophia was at the bottom of the abyss, sinking in muck and darkness. She could no longer fly off to her subconscious state of well-being. The terror was in plain sight. With Mark still gone all the time, I was overwhelmed again. I had another new self-imposed responsibility, a damaged little Sophia to deal with. She was screaming and begging for help and healing, and I felt completely incapable of caring for her. I barely had enough skills to care for my kids and myself, let alone an insecure, abused, or neglected child inside of me. She was angry and relentless. If you won't take care of me, who will? She would challenge. It had never been about having an affair or about promiscuity or adultery. I was clear about that. When a man, old or young, wanted to take me to his car or get me home after dancing and one too many drinks, I was mortified and disgusted he'd even ask. On the other hand, maybe, just maybe, he'd adult nap me and knock me clear out of my wretched melancholy, out of polygamy, out of Sophia's painful memories. I fluttered dangerously, like a moth too close to a flame. Poof, we'd be gone, taking the easy way out. My descent into hell ripped at Mark's guts while he was too far away to comfort or stop me. My misbehaving little girl, full of self-destruction, was raging to create some chaos before all the sadness sucked the life out of her. When I would check myself and try to stop us from annihilation, we remained even more defeated. The first night of Mark's weekend home after another 7 weeks of absence, he stood by the bathroom door looking brokenhearted. He watched me pile some of my long blonde hair on my head, put a little too much makeup on, and put on some gaudy looking earrings. When I tried to leave the bathroom, he stepped in front of me. I know you're going bar hopping again tonight, all dressed up in those tight jeans and sexy blouse, and you keep telling me you're not going out to get picked up. You might as well wear a sign that says, "Come and F me." I tried hard not to pay any attention to Mark's chest as it rose and fell with his breaking heart. Nor did I want to hear his gasping breaths or see the tears forming in his eyes. I didn't want to hurt him, and I didn't have a clue what to tell him anyway. Trying to force myself back to numb just wasn't working anymore. Loving him and sharing him, I keep thinking I'm going to sneeze, hurt way too much. His short visits from California felt like torture. I didn't want to leave him, and I didn't want to stay living with him in polygamy. The only way I knew how to get out was was destructive to all of us. For a few seconds, Mark wouldn't budge from the doorway. Then he stepped aside. Go ahead, then, Sophia. You might as well reach in and rip my heart out and chest and stomp on it. I can't stand the thought of you in another man's arms. Excuse me a second, y'all. I feel like I'm gonna sneeze. Ooh! You know when you get that tickle in your nose and it just won't go away? I got the tickle and it keeps coming back, which means my allergies are about to act up. I know it. Interesting that he's worried about her being in another man's arms when he can be in another woman's, or vice versa. From years of hearing and knowing of his sexual encounters with Diane, see, I already knew far more pain than he could ever comprehend, but his light blue eyes glistened with tears and began to draw me in. None of my behaviors were aimed at hurting him. I wanted to stop what I was doing, undress for him from head to toe, melt in his arms, and stay there with him forever. But I couldn't. He would be sleeping with Diane that night. It was her turn again. At least I won't be effing any of them, I yelled. Tears poured down my face as I finished the blow. While you're out there screwing Diane, I'll be dancing with whomever I damn well please. My mother should have been there for me. Where was she when I was molested over and over again? When I was alone and hurting? I could hear her angry screams at Dad and then her lonely sobbing into her pillow. Her absence tangled and twisted in my guts. As a child and teen, I watched her act like it didn't matter, and a martyr. I heard her calling out to Dad, Aunt Eleanor, and anyone else who would be happy to take advantage of her. Here I am, all of you precious, more deserving than I am, folks. I'm ready for you to come over and crap on me and my kids while I keep on kissing your... But no, my mother wouldn't dare say that word. My mother's demeanor followed the perfect code of ethics for women in our religion. The most qualified women were those like her, those who were full of humility and who practiced constant servitude and sweetness to their husbands and others. My mom didn't seem to give a wing-ding about her kids going without a room, clothing, meals, their father's time, her time, money, Christmas and birthdays. My mom was too busy worrying about pleasing Owen, Eleanor, and God. She was busy doing the work of the Lord as if the Lord was needy. She sacrificed everything so others could have and was so busy people-pleasing, we children often went without and were abandoned. I visited Mom only a few times, compared to nearly every week. On those occasions, I took her grocery shopping, watched The Price is Right with her, and cleaned the house. If I had to walk or listen to her, I felt more frustration and resentment toward her. For just over 3 months, those black clouds lingered. It seemed they'd never leave, like my mother's fight with the devil's imps so long ago. They obviously hadn't passed me by either. As a young girl and woman, all my desires were to be the mother I never had. I was going to be a perfect mom and a perfect person. Yet all of Mom's infirmities were epitomized in me. Like her, I had even become a perfect saint in public, but self-loathing nothing in private. Early late evening, after another dangerous episode of my self-will run riot, I woke up with my old suffocating chest pain. It felt like someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed it so hard it couldn't beat. I was sure I would die physically, spiritually, and emotionally if I stayed in so much grief. Mark could hear my anguish. On the other end of the phone, I could hear him crying with me. He wanted to be there holding me again. He begged me to stay, even though he too knew the umpteen reasons for living polygamy were making less and less sense to the both of us. But he told me, I can't ever leave Diane. We made commitments to her we shouldn't break. I know, Mark. I'd never ask you to leave her. I never will. I know you can't let go of your duties, but I'm not sure how to survive if I stay. Like a maniac, I fixed dinner, did the dishes, got the kids ready for bed, put a VHS movie on for the noise, and dropped into my big bed next to Keith. What? For days, I couldn't stop crying, even though I felt emotionless. Back at the Salt Lake County Medical Clinic, I attempted to explain to my newly assigned therapist, Scott, the who, why, when, and what of my life. Little Sophia and I needed to find the courage to live or the courage to die, I told him. Between floods of rage and tears, I told Scott, along with little Sophia's horrendous pain and my adult tribulations, we were busy inciting dangerous situations that I wasn't sure how to handle. If I couldn't pull myself together and keep little Sophia safe from her pain, we both die. Scott reassured me, Sophia, you're going to become clear again. As long as you stay in touch with life and with me, you'll be running smoothly in no time. I gave all of my kids who were home super long, meaningful hugs and cuddled 2-year-old Keith on my lap. Oh, okay. Because I was like, who is Keith? But Keith is her child. I was like, who is Keith? Every day, all day long, I repeated my new affirmations. I am valuable asset to the adult me, little Sophia, my children, and the universe. Scott was right. One gorgeous morning, after a few weeks of intense therapy, I awoke to gems dancing through the multifaceted prism dangling in my window. They sang of joyous days, weeks, and months ahead. The sunbeams of hope flickered across my pillow, danced around my room, across my face. I knew I would be able to pull my priorities together. I vowed to put little Sophia first in every thought and action until she was well and happy. None of us would be. I told her I would honor her, even though I was a little afraid of the bullies on the outside and the inside of our lives. I would do everything in my power to protect her, me, and my children and other children from ever being disregarded, rejected, ignored, neglected, or abused. Deep inside, I knew the anger I directed at my mother for all her imperfections was really aimed at me. She was my scapegoat. Mom had already been way too harsh towards herself for her defects of character. I knew her absence in her children's lives was the only way she knew how to deal with her own constant heartaches. Even though we didn't ask her to, every day for years, she had been doing her best to make up for those days gone by. She would continue to make amends for the rest of her life. In time, I understood she'd done her best with what she knew. As I forgave her for not being perfect, I was learning to forgive myself for not being perfect. And I too would continue to do the best that I could, even amid my own inadequacies. In June, our oldest son, Jake, detached his miserable life with our family and moved in with his beautiful girlfriend. While I was happy for him to be away and in love, his moving felt like a confirmation of every inadequacy I ever felt. I was grateful I had already begun to establish a support group and had Scott's support in my life while I beat myself up for the numerous falls and mistakes. And that is the end of chapter 33. Sorry I didn't talk as much, but I got to get ready to take my son to martial arts. Y'all let me know what you thought of these 3 chapters. I think it was 3. We went through a lot here. So tell me what you think. Until next time.